So welcome to AFOA Canada's 7th live webinar in the series, The Evolving Indigenous Workplace, Defining a New Normal, where we are sharing resources and information that can help you navigate through the ever-changing events around COVID-19. If you have any questions during the presentation, please add them to the Q&A window, and there will be a 15 to 20-minute Q&A session at the end of the presentation also. We will be having some polling questions throughout the webinar, so please submit your answers. Today, our presentation is CPA Canada Financial Literacy, Fraud Protection. Fraud is now a reality, and it behooves all of us to learn more about what is a fraud. In this session, you will also learn the types of fraud, how it works, and signs of being victimized. In addition, you will know what to do if you've fallen victim, as well as some real-life example of fraud. Our presenters today, Linda Yao, she's a CPA Chartered Professional Accountant, and Jerry Pan, also a CPA. Jerry started his accounting career as a teaching assistant when he was at York University. After graduation, he worked in a reputable accounting firm in Saskatchewan for more than 3 years. Currently, he is working in the Treasury and Tax Department of an advertising company in downtown Toronto. Jerry joined the CPA Financial Literacy Program last year and enjoys helping people by sharing accounting and financial knowledge. Linda has been a CPA member since 1993. She used her CPA certification to help companies design and develop financial systems. She enjoys inspiring people to save more and become financially independent. She has achieved this goal for herself and loves to share her simple and easy to follow strategies. She is also passionate to help people find their passion and become self-starter and a self-learner. Please welcome Linda and Jerry. Over to you there, Linda.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? So for the most part, we're still in lockdown. So I congratulate everyone who is here and to learn about fraud. So give yourself a clap. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to help you understand fraud and how to protect yourself from becoming a victim. We have an hour or so you should have a copy of the presentation. And if you don't, you're more than welcome to take a screenshot of what I'm going to present. And if you have questions, you can either speak up or put it in the chat, and then we'll address it at the end. And if there's any questions I have not addressed, I will show you what my contact information and Jerry's contact information, so that you're more than welcome to send an email or connect with us on LinkedIn. This section is organized, of course, by AFOA and in conjunction with CPA. Carol Ann Grant, who's our volunteer coordinator from Chartered Professional Accountant of Canada. So accountants work with numbers. We just love numbers. We help business to be honest and successful. So CPA Canada is one of the largest accounting organizations in the world, represent more than 210,000 CPAs across the country. So Canadian CPAs are recognized and respected across the globe in their knowledge and integrity. So some CPA works in accounting firms, but when I started, I work actually in the IT department, and I use my CPA knowledge to design, develop, and implement accounting systems. And there are other people in the entertainment industry, sports industry, technology, nonprofit, so we are everywhere. So depending on the specific job, CPA can be responsible for many things, business, finances, managing budget, developing plans, policy, and everything that's under the umbrella. So let's get started. So when I was in the corporate world, it was years ago, so we didn't have a lot of fraud because we used mainframe and mini computer. At that point, fraud is not really well known. when we have fraud, it's actually people with people. So you have a whole bunch of people that will defraud you. So let me start by sharing my screen so that, yeah, let me see, how did it go? Share. So let me look at the agenda for a minute. So the first thing we will do is take a quick survey. Now this survey is anonymous, so you don't have to worry about that we're gonna know who you are. So it allows us to know you better and what kind of information you're looking for. And then rest of the stuff is more about knowing fraud, how do you avoid it, what do you do when you have fraud, and some realistic examples. So thank you, Douglas, for doing the survey. So I'll give you a few minutes to answer the 5 questions, and then we'll share the answer. The first one is, why are you attending this session? Which is simple. You know, you want to learn something, or you just here passing time, or you want to meet people. There are just a few things for you to answer. Then the next question is, I've been defrauded before. Now, don't be shy, because I have been defrauded before. I have, I guess, a fraud protection God on my side. So a lot of times I escape without harm. So, and I'm knock on wood again, every time to thank for the blessing that I have. Now, the third question is, if you have been defrauded, what happened? Now you can do multiple answer here. So you could have lost money, you could have lost identity, lost SIN number, and all that stuff. So answer that truthfully, because it's all anonymous. And what do you worry about mostly? If you didn't get defrauded, and what is it, the one thing that, or a bunch of things you're afraid of? And lastly, what do you want to learn here? What is the few things that you're actually wanting to learn? Now, there may be things that's on there that we don't have yet for this course or for this session, but certainly you can email us and we can address. So I'll give you another half a minute to finish this. Can you, oh, there it is. Okay. Excellent. Most of you want to learn something about fraud, and you want to be fraud career. A few people, very good. This is a very hot career, so yeah, there's a lot of need in this area. Douglas, can you scroll down? I don't think oh yes, I can scroll down. So number 2, it's only a few scammed this year, very good. So you probably are learning last 3 years more, prior to 3 years, yes. Never been defrauded. Congratulations, 41%. But it's good that you're here to learn how not to be frauded. Number 3 is you have been defrauded, what happened? So typically it's money, yes, 30% money, my credit card, personal information taken, yeah. And identity stolen, yeah, I feel sorry for you, I really do. It takes a long time to get your identity back. What do you worry about? Definitely identity. A lot of you are, and credit card, yes, and very good. Your home and car. Don't want to say, that's okay. And the last thing is, what do you want to learn? Type of fraud. Very good. There's a lot of types out there. And we covered 4 major ones here. They may be dated, so but we insert a bunch of links for you to take a look so that you can stay in tune. So learning, all this learning is to open the door. This is not everything you need to know about fraud for sure. And so if we give you areas where you can read about it, and there's also a lot of books that you can take a look, so that would help. Thank you, Doug. So let's go ahead and start. Just a quick introduction about what fraud is, and I think a lot of you already know, because that's why you're here. Fraud is methodical and layered. Why is that? Because I'm telling you, fraudsters never sleep. We sleep, but they don't sleep. So in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I get up, I see an email, and there it is. You know, ask me to click on something, and then at night there's more email come in, so they never sleep. So awareness is not enough. However, we need to be vigilant. We need to have vigilance. But that means we don't want to be paranoid either. So my mother-in-law is 85. I don't know if she's afraid of fraud or not, but 2 weeks ago, she decided to terminate her Wi-Fi. So I'm thinking that is not good. So don't be afraid of it, but be vigilant. And one thing that we want to tell you is victim, we are sometimes the victim, don't always play a part. So as a lot of people know, when they get their identity stolen, that a lot of it take a life of its own. You don't have to say anything. You don't send any email. You have to say yes, no. It just happens. So those are the things that we have to really watch out for. So here is a screenshot that I got from this website that tells us a little bit about more up-to-date numbers. So this year so far at the end of April, we already lost $22 million, a little over $22 million. And there's 18,000 reported cases, 6,000 victims. So if you're a victim here, you're not alone. There's a lot coming up. And this is just for COVID scam. COVID scams on the rise. There's over $1 million in reported losses in just for COVID. So how do you get scammed? Well, a lot of it is about crowdfunding. So people are raising funds to help others, and that fund never goes anywhere. So that could be one. So RCMP has a definition of 2 types of fraud. One is theft, one is fraud. Theft is just like stealing something from you. So your credit card, your SIN number, your identity, but they haven't produced, they're not in fraud yet until they use that information. So fraud is when they use the information that they stole to do something. So how can you be aware of the damage? Sometimes you don't. So any number of things could happen, occur. So money withdrawn your account. So in the 1990s and early 2000, I opened a Tangerine account for savings only. So I put money in there, and then lo and behold, 2 years later, after I opened, I got a call from Tangerine saying, "Have you been taking money out?" I said, "No, why would I? It's in my saving account." And so I was surprised. So I went in there and actually logged in. And for sure enough, over $15,000 was withdrawn in the 2 weeks period. And that was during 9/11. I thought to myself, great, I've just funded, terrorism. Luckily, I can prove that it was in California and not in Detroit when that happened. So I got all my money back plus the interest. And that's when I was telling you that I have this fraud protection God over me, and everything that happened, they seem to be able to restore. But that could happen to anybody. I just want to tell you that the person who did the stealing was actually part of the company. And because there was no activity in the account, so he figures that he can just dip in himself. The other thing is, if you realize you have new accounts or loans being created in your name, yeah, it happens. And it's not something you've done. Something could have happened in defrauding you. As well as any retail purchases. We have a lot of Amazon products sent to our home because my husband loves buying stuff on Amazon. So if it's not one of those he bought, it could be someone else, and then it could be defrauding. So damage to your credit record is obvious. So if they borrow, $100,000 from your name, and they skip and they don't pay the money back, and you get stuck with it, of course, there's a lot of negative impact, and sometimes it's irreversible. And you have to be careful. So how do you do it? So we're going to talk about how does identity fraud work and how does this type of crime manifest itself? It does. It just because the people who steal your identity probably sell your identity to someone who's going to defraud you. And it doesn't have to be the same person. It could be like 3 or 4 levels down. How will you know? We'll let you know, and in the next few slides, and what you should do. There's a bunch of places where you can report. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do in terms of capturing this. You just have to wait for the authority to get to it and trace it to that person. And sometimes it's very difficult. So what does identity fraud look like? There's top 3 scans, and I got them all. In my email, in my letters, I've seen them all. So fraudulent services. So one day I was on the computer early in the morning, a little pop-up comes up, says, hey, your computer is not in tune. Can we tune it for you? It says Microsoft. So I said, sure. Because it's Microsoft, I thought to myself, it gotta be good. It wasn't. They took over my computer. I was freaking out, so I shut the whole thing down, and then we end up having to reinstall everything. The second is price pitch. Someone tells you, oh, you've won, $500,000, but could you please send in over $5,000 so I can unlock your prize? That is a price pitch. And the last thing is grandparent scam. Now, grandparent scam has never happened to me because I have no kids, so I'm not a grandparent, but I do have nieces and nephews. So grandparent scam is about sending an email or a letter to your grandparents and say, well, I'm your grandson, I'm in trouble in Africa, please send $5,000 or $25,000. And that itself, the grandparents obviously love their grandchild, will automatically send it over and the money disappears. So that is very important that you realize what these are. And these are the typical information people are looking for. So your name, full name, middle name, everything, date of birth, social insurance number, full address. Now, just be aware where you put your full address. My husband, he's on the line here. The other day I was using his keys. So because I didn't bring my key, I said, dear, can you please pass me your key so I can go open the door? So I took these keys and I looked at it and it's got name, phone number, the address. I know he meant, if I lose it, can you please return it to me? But guess what? That's also a place where you can give all your information to fraudsters. So now you lost your key. They got the keys to your front door, your back door, and your safe deposit box and everything. So you might as well invite them in to open the door and just everything, right? So be careful where you put your name and address. Similarly with your suitcase. So don't do that. Don't put your name, your phone number, your address on your suitcase. Just do it enough, maybe your email address, so that they can get hold of you if you did lose your suitcase. Mother's maiden name used to be used by the bank all the time. And it's no longer used now that they have flexible questions. So mother's maiden name, it's not a good thing to let everybody know. Username, password. So a lot of people save their username, password on a piece of paper and stick it to the computer screen. Well, we're telling people don't do that anymore. Driver's license number as well as health card. There's many other information that people will look for, but these are some of the key, and the passport number. I had people send me an email say, oh, can you please give me your passport because I want to give you this. So I would never send it. So criminals can use stolen or reproduced personal financial information to access your bank accounts and apply for loans, credit cards, we mentioned about that, and for other goods and services, to purchase from Amazon, Kijiji, anywhere, as well as receive government benefit. So if you're looking at social insurance, they could do the OA security, Canada pension, they could withdraw all that stuff. So just be careful, because they can and they will do the unthinkable. So now I'm going to pass this to Jerry. He's going to go through the next couple sections, and I'll come back to finish it off in the real part of the real life example. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Can everyone hear me? Okay, I'm going to move on to signs of being victimized. The first sign would be creditors mentioning unknown loans that you have never taken out. Because somebody has already used your name to take out a loan and used for themselves. And the second sign of being victimized is you get notices of denied applications when you try to apply for a new loan or a new credit card. In that case, your credit rating has been ruined by someone else. So when you try to get new loans, the new creditors would not try to give the money to you, would not approve your application. The third type of sign that you are being victimized is you receive bills for goods and services that you did not really receive or you did not even order. Watch out for those. The next type of sign of being victimized is you find that some statements are missing, whether these are bank statements or credit card statements, because the criminals have already diverted the mails away. Another type of sign being victimized is that a bank may contact you by email or telephone. However, this is a little tricky because some of those emails may be fraud themselves. So watch out, because usually banks do not contact you by email very often. If that's the case, it will usually be reminding you of an appointment or noticing you that a statement is ready. If you are not sure whether it is really legitimate email or telephone from the bank, walk into a branch and ask to confirm the information. Okay, next slide, please. Here, I'm going to talk about what you should do. So based on the recommendation of RCMP, if you suspect that your personal information is being used without your authorization, you should first create a log of your activities and communications in the past few days or even past few weeks. Then you should contact the credit agencies. In Canada, there are two credit agencies. One is called Equifax and the other one is called TransUnion. You will be able to find their phone number at the end of our slides. Now, talk to those credit agencies and request placing a fraud alert in your files. Also, you should order copies of your credit reports from them. Notice that credit reports are free once a year from Equifax. You will not need to pay anything. However, if you try to get their extra service called credit score, you will need to pay an additional $12, $13. But the credit report is free. Now, next, you should talk to your creditors, including your bank and the credit card companies, to let them know that your account may be tampered, and let them find out if there is any suspicious transaction in the past. Following that, you should talk to the local police department. And last, you should keep Canadian Antifraud Center in the loop by contacting them at the number below, so that they may help you do further investigation. Okay, next slide, please. Here are some sources of useful information. The first one I would like to bring up is the Identity Theft and the Identity Fraud Victims Assistance Guide. This is from the Anti-Fraud Center run by Government of Canada. Feel free to check out this website after our presentation. The next one is called Consumer Agency of Canada. You can find their website here. There is a dedicated section for fraud protection. By the way, this website offered by the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada has a lot of useful information. it's a good idea to search that website. It may help you save some money or improve your financial behavior. Okay, next slide, please. Whether you are a victim of fraud or you are simply trying to help, knowing your stuff is important. Aside from taking this presentation, why not test your identity theft IQ with the quiz from the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse? Feel free to check out this quiz. Whenever you answer a yes to any of the questions, you get the points. However, the more points you get, the higher the risk you will become a victim of the fraud. So I would recommend that you check out this website and avoid those behaviors on the quiz. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to move on to some common types of fraud. The first type of fraud would be called Nigeria letter scams. In this type of scam, the fraudster will ask you to forward a small sum of money to help them unlock a much larger amount of money, of which you are promised a sizable chunk. As Linda mentioned before, they may ask you to forward $5,000 to unlock, let's say, $100,000, something like that. Obviously, that's too good to be true. The next type of scam is inheritance scam. It's similar to the Nigeria letter scams. In the inheritance scam, the fraudster would like to ask you some money to help their fictitious dying relative. Then the fraudster will promise you to give you a portion of the dying relative's inheritance. Again, that's really too good to be true. Stay away from those scams. The next type of fraud is called advanced fee loans. Sometimes you will be promised to get a loan at low interest rate or a lot of good features, but there's a catch. You need to pay an advanced fee to facilitate your application. Whenever you are in that situation, be very careful because you may lose the application fee to the fraudster. And in addition, you will lose your personal identification information for the criminals. So that's the third type of common fraud. And another type of common fraud is called check overpayment fraud. This is a little bit complicated and it involves a few steps. Usually, in this case, the victim is the seller of goods and the fraudster will pretend to be the buyer of goods. Now, step number one involves the fraudster buying goods from the victim, who is a seller. And then the fraudster will write a fake check to the victim with the amount greater than the amount of purchase. Now, immediately following that, the fraudster will demand the victim to wire back the so-called excess payment when in fact the check is empty. So in this case, the seller or the victim will lose twice, once by losing goods, the second time by losing the lost wire payment. Now, how do you prevent this type of check overpayment fraud if you are the seller? I think you can do three things. Number one is to ask for the legal name of the buyer. In most cases, a legit buyer would appreciate you to ask for their legal names so that they can get the invoice with their correct names. Now, if they start to hide their true name, be a little careful. That's number one. And number two, if you receive an overpayment check, ask why it happens, why they are paying you more. You may be able to uncover that there is some scam going on. And number three is, let's say if you feel that the payment is legitimate, deposit the check into the bank and wait for a few days. Make sure the check is cleared without bouncing back before you wire back the excess payment. Okay, next slide, please. In addition to those four common types of fraud mentioned above, actually, there is a comprehensive list of frauds from the Antifraud Center. from A to W, feel free to check out those frauds so that you may be alert in any of those situations. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to move on to the real examples. I will start with the online frauds. Usually, a lot of times, the fraudster will appeal to the victim and they will ask for money because the fraudster would pretend to be a victim of some kind of natural disaster. They will ask for help in the form of money. One example would be what's going on here. They will pretend to be a victim of COVID-19 and ask the true victim to wire the money. Be very careful about this situation. The next type of online example is called money abuse. This is simple. Basically, the criminals use spams to infect the victim's computers and gain access to password. Then the criminals will transfer funds from the victim's account to the criminal's bank account. Another type of online real example is using a victim's social insurance number to file tax return and get a tax refund. However, the criminals will divert the tax refund to their own bank account rather than to the true victim's bank account. So let's say if you receive a notice of assessment from CRA saying that you have already filed the tax and you get this refund, but when in fact you haven't even filed your return yet, then be very careful. Phone CRA ASAP to make sure that they are nobody is actually filing a fake return for you and get a tax refund. Okay, next slide, please. Now I'm going to move on to a real life example, which is an offline example called medical identity theft. In this case, the fraudster will use stolen ID to obtain medical treatment or products. This is more common in the United States because surgery is not covered by the government. However, that doesn't mean it doesn't really happen in Canada. For example, the criminals may use your insurance card to get expensive medicine and use up your annual limit. And by the time you actually use your own card for legitimate reason for yourself, you will be noticed that you have already used up the limit and you cannot get access to the medicine or the services that you really deserve for. Now, the next type of offline real life example is called skimmers. So skimmers are used to get information from cards when the victim inserts the cards into ATM machine or payment terminals. Now, as you can see from the bottom left picture here, which is an ATM example, the criminal put a fake cover of the card insertion point in the ATM machine. That cover actually can read your card information, and there may be even a camera looking at your fingers to catch the password. When you insert your bank debit card into the terminal, ATM terminal, please feel free to check out. Give a little push of the card insertion point to see if it comes off easily. If it does come off easily, please notify the bank ASAP. The other type of such type of fraud is through the terminal. Some criminals will use a fake terminal to facilitate your transaction, but at the same time, reading your card information. They are going to use this information to duplicate a counterfeit card and use the counterfeit card to buy things online or to get even cash out of the bank. Now, the second type, which is through the sales terminal, is a little more difficult to detect. I would recommend that you check your bank statements on a regular basis or even online banking on a regular basis so that you can identify any suspicious transactions in time and notify the bank. Okay, now I have finished my portion and I'm going to pass back to Linda to continue on the real life example on corporate identity theft.
Thank you, Jerry. So corporate identity theft in real life happens all the time. And so here are a few things that the fraudster would do. And there's a lot. I did some research in the last few days. It's amazing how corporations of different size are being taken by fraudsters. Those fraudsters could be part of the company, could be even, you know, the director, the CEO, whatever, but they do that. So let's take a look. So they could do fake minutes. So if they didn't meet, they could do a fake minute and then charge the expenses. That could be one. They could use checks and stolen identity of company officers. So, and you know, in one of the cases that the CEO, CFO did not write the check, but it was cashed with her signature on it. The next is take control of the asset. So here we have an example where Red Cross lost some digital data, as well as CPA has lost some in the last little while. And the fraudster take over the name list, the email address. Luckily for Red Cross, there was no financial information credit card. CPA was lucky as well. All their financial information was encrypted. So that was one thankful thing that happened. So every company, every organization is susceptible. The last thing is create profitable situation on a potentially much larger scales, like BRIEX. BRIEX is the Indonesia gold mine. There was never any gold in there, maybe a little bit, but they blow it up. So those are the things that happens regularly with corporations. So here's the Red Cross, here's the 550,000 Australians leaked online, their information. The CPA, 329,000, but luckily there's no financial information leaked out. Here's one that's very famous, is Shark Tank. Barbara Corcoran, she thought she lost 400,000, and that's true. In the end of February, I think February 27th, she paid her contractor for renovation, and then found out the person she wired or sent the money to is not the right person. And a few days later in March, she actually got it back. So if you do find anything that's suspicious, you should call the bank right away, because it takes maybe 24 hours, 48 hours for that money moving from one account to the other account. So if they could stop it in the middle, which in this case they did, Barbara was able to get her money back. So here are a few things that corporate can look after when they are in the situation. When you're dealing with people, I know it used to be handshake was enough to do a contract, but today it should be in a written contract. Signed, written, select good employees. In my case with Tangerine, that was unfortunately was an unethical employee who took my card or duplicated my card and then started taking my money out. Establish zero tolerance policy. So if you've seen something, you say something, and that is one thing that the corporation could implement. Keep an eye open, so always double check, triple check everything that the corporation is doing, and practice good accounting. So if you don't have a good accounting, how do you know somebody is taking money from you? The next 5 is manage the merchandise. Most companies will do inventory check every quarter, so maybe do it more vigilantly. And equipment, sometimes the equipment disappears, overhead projector or printer disappears. So take your inventory. Use security system in the office. Control access points. So if you have a vault, to make sure only 1 or 2 people can access that area. And manage data access. I know these days everything is online. So I know when I was working at Canadian Tire, they have test data. So all their customer financial information, everything is on the test database. If we want to do some testing, we use the test data. We don't see the customer name, address, or anything, not even the credit card, but we can test using the makeup data. Managed phone lines. This is not as relevant as what it was once before, but definitely managing the phone lines so that they're not calling your people to make fraud claims. So one thing I did my research, and AFOA did a publish in 2015 about fraud, cyber fraud, and it was pretty good. So I just letting you know that there is one. Maybe you want to go and read it. It's still pretty relevant what they said, as well as how to protect your organization out of this whole thing. I think what I wasn't aware of, but now I am, is do an insurance rider to protect against cyber fraud. I did not know that we could do that, but I guess it makes sense to be able to take out the insurance fraud. So just so that you know, Facebook and any of the social media will have a bunch of fraudsters that's behind the scenes. So here's Facebook publishing their 7 very common scam in their system. So the link will take you there. I won't cover it because in the interest of time, I know this is extra. So then same with LinkedIn. LinkedIn has 5 top scam artists in their system. So in conclusion, what is the best thing to do? Number one, we, as a corporation or even individually, we should be able to recover our data. I truly believe that we need to back up the data either on a hard drive, portable hard drive, or remotely. If it's secure data, I would think that you need to buy something that's secure. Now, OneDrive or Google Drive may not be secure enough for you, so I would look into other areas. Look for mechanisms that let you know when identity may be compromised, and so check, your statement, check your email to see if anything from the bank comes in, say you owe this money. As well as the last thing is control the disclosure of your personal information. Really don't tell people all 9 digits of social insurance number. If someone calls and says, I need your social insurance number to verify who you are, give them the last 3 digits. That is probably the best thing. 3 types of control. The best way to control it is to prevent it. So nothing will ever happen. I see there were 41% of people never got defrauded. That's great. Hoping you are doing some prevention. If not, count your luck, because it is very good that you haven't got defrauded. And detection, monthly statement, going through everything that you have, take away things that you don't use anymore. And the last thing is correction. Correction is not as easy as they seem when you have your identity stolen. It takes years and months, and it's just a lot of hassle. Some days I feel really bad for those people who got their identity stolen. Maybe they should take a new identity, probably would be easier. But to be honest, to be fair, the correction of it is horrendous. It seems like the fraudster can take your identity much easier than you can get your own back. It's not fair, I know, but that's the way the society is right now. So 3 additional tips. We all want to have easy access to our computer. So we link all our computer together. We link our cell phone to our computer to our laptop. So using one sign-on, stop doing that if you want to protect yourself, because deconverge, meaning that split them up. So if you do get your laptop stolen, they're not going to be able to access your phone data. They're not going to be able to access your iPad or whatever other things you have. So deconverge is one of the ways that you can protect yourself at one level. Sanitize, meaning that if you have accounts out there, let's say I have shoppers bonus points, the point cards. I don't use it anymore. Then get rid of it and tell them to delete you, because otherwise your name, your phone number, it's going to be floating somewhere out there. And if they ever get compromised, you are done in. The last thing is passphrases. It's easier to use numbers, and people can probably figure out what that is, but using passphrases is easier for you to remember, and it's hard for people to figure that out. But don't share that with anybody. So the last thing I want to pass to you is Equifax and TransUnion phone numbers, as well as some anti-fraud center, which we posted before. The last one on here is a little black book that Jerry had found for us. It's really good reading for you. It's talking about superheroes and how can you be a superhero fighting the crime. So go ahead and read that. And it also has a list of type of crimes that's out there as well. It's a different way of presenting it, but it's really interesting. So this is a attendee evaluation. If you could help us while we answer the question to see if we help you understand a little bit more about fraud and protection for this particular session. It's only 45 minutes that we spent with you, but hopefully you've learned a little bit more, and then you have a whole bunch of links to look into as well. So go ahead and do your evaluation, please.
So in the meantime, Linda, I'll ask you a couple questions. So one of the attendees here asked an interesting question, and essentially what it was is, you know, how you kind of put your information into some of these stores, like the Bay as an example, when we apply for credit to these major stores. And what the person wanted to know was, are we protected from stores in terms of our personal information when we provide our information to these companies, like the Bay as an example? How are we protected?
Legally, they're supposed to protect all the customer information, but in reality, sometimes those stores are not equipped to protect it. But I think it is reality that we do want some of the bonuses, reward, and yes, but be very careful of giving out your home address. A lot of these companies now only ask for email address, which is fine, but they should never ask your credit card information or SIN number or anything that's pertaining to you, or even your address. And so just give them the bare minimum, and even your birth. Some of them want your date of birth. Just give them the month and the year. I mean, the month and the day. Don't give them the year.
Just to add on that, I think the question may be having another type of meaning. So it's probably whether the credit card through those major stores are protected. I would say the answer is yes, but you do need to do your work. This is what I do on a monthly basis. I actually collect all the purchase receipts, and when I get the credit card statement, I will check off the box to make sure that transaction has already taken place based on the receipts I have. Let's say if you see a suspicious transaction on a statement of the credit card offered by the stores, you can always go back to the store and ask them for a refund, as long as you have the proof for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another question I'd like to ask is, you mentioned this award cards and deleting information. Is how would you go about doing that? Like, do you have to send an email in? Do you have to send contact someone, a letter, and the follow-up portion of that? How does that all happen?
Well, it can't be, it's not 100%. You do call the customer service and tell them, I don't want to be part of your reward program anymore. Please delete me. But the deletion itself, the actual deletion is still up to the company. But in the future, let's say you get an email from Canadian Tire, you know, the triangle, and you already asked them to remove you, then call them back again. Just tell them to please remove me, because not every company goes through the whole sanitized process to take their customer at their words. So they keep them forever, and then just goes on and on. I have a friend who wanted her name off the company, she finally just terminate her email and then start over again, because the company will not remove them, because it's not one of those things that they do, or they don't even have function to delete you.
Okay. All right, I got another question here from Robin Mitchell. It says, when reporting fraud to the RCMP Anti-Fraud Center, they've never proceeded with any work to recoup any costs. How do we instill confidence in a system that actively informs victims when they report the fraud that there's not only nothing they can do about it, but nothing they will do about it?
Yeah. So RCMP is really strapped to doing what they call the physical violation. As far as fraud, they will record it. There's very little they can do, because they don't have the facility and they don't have the know-how in their shop to actually do it. So I've reported my own stuff and then just leave it there. So it is, again, it's up to us right now. Maybe that will change in the future. I hope it does. But right now, still, prevention is number one. And then reporting is only a process right now. And they just don't have enough, they just have not enough manpower to get to the bottom of this. And if they do, great. But it's not one of those priority things that they put on.
Okay.
And I would like to add on that. A lot of the frauds are actually cross-border. So they are from another country with very little good legislation being enforced. So it's very almost impossible for our RCMP to trace down to the actual criminal. Having said that, I would say that if you suspect a link is a fraud link, hover your mouse over that link, but do not click on it. Once you hover your mouse over this fictitious link, you will see some weird website that you do not even recognize. If that's the case, put it, report the phishing to your email provider so that they can block it later. That's my best suggestion in terms of online frauds.
Okay.
Yeah, so TD had that fraud. I reported because when I hover the mouse, it's not at td.com. It's you know, blah 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 blah. It's a whole bunch of things, and then TD somewhere. So yeah, it looks like it's not from TD. So I send it to TD to have them take a look.
Okay, I got a question. Maybe this is answered from Angela Slaughter. What protections should you take when online shopping? That's big right now, right? Everybody's doing that in COVID. So what protection should you take?
Well, if you're shopping, shop at a reputable site. So Amazon's pretty good. Shopify is not bad, because you want the site to own up their vendors. Because if the vendor didn't deliver the product, Shopify, Amazon actually get your money back if you complain. And there are other sites who are not as reputable. They may be part of the fraudster, then your money is gone. Especially if you wait for 3 to 5 days waiting for the product to show up, it's gone. One of my friends actually bought some books through Kijiji. He was supposed to get it yesterday and he hasn't got it. I'm thinking he might have got defrauded because he sent the money through PayPal. The guy's got the money. The guy promised to deliver the book. Who knows? So we're keeping our fingers crossed that he didn't get defrauded, but in the back of my mind, because I'm doing this seminar here, I'm thinking he might have gotten defrauded. So yeah, just be careful, because Kijiji is not a shopping site. Typically, when I buy things from Kijiji, I go to the person's house to pick it up. And so now they're sending through mail. It's not as good as what it was once before. So be careful where you buy from.
Okay, and I think another question here, which is similar to the one asked before, is in terms of lotteries, right? So how can we get our address off lotteries, like the hospital lottery? So you may buy a ticket, and then all of a sudden you're on their list forever. So what would your advice be to get our names off there? Because I know one is, you call them and so forth, but if it doesn't happen, then what do you do? Yeah,
I think you just change your email address and then just forget it, because I think the problem with these charity sites is once they have the database, it's duplicated everywhere. And so even if you ask one person to delete it and the next person still has it. So my friend did that, just change her email address and terminate the other one and start over again.
Okay. I think another question, like on identity theft. So after you know that your identity has been stolen, what would you say are the critical steps to take at the beginning?
Well, let your bank know for sure, because that's where your money is stored, and change everything, change your password where you can, and let your company know as well, because that could impact them, because the password may go through the computer and then to their site. So just change everything.
I would say the critical steps are letting the government agencies know. Let's say if somebody loses the driver's license, it's better to notify the government agency ASAP as soon as possible. And then let's say if the credit card is lost, notify the issuer as soon as possible, and also talk to both credit agencies in Canada, again, Equifax and the TransUnion. That way, they can, the credit card company can place some kind of freeze on the account to prevent further use by other people. And also the credit rating agencies, Equifax and the TransUnion, will make sure further unethical spending won't really impair your credit rating.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on what level, and I do agree with Jerry that all the financial institutions should be notified. Your company, where you're working, all the associate, if they're part of AFOA, then you guys should be notified as well, because there'll be, you know, a user ID going into the system, so they should notify them. Yes, I totally agree, Jerry. Thank you.
Okay, so we've kind of come up to our time now. So I wanted to certainly thank you both, for Linda Gao and Jerry Pan from CPA Canada, and all our participants for registering for today's live webinar. Recordings of slides will be added to the webinar page at www.AFOA.ca. So, you know, the survey that was just provided, you know, which, you know, was supposed to be after our webinar, but certainly provided, you know, please fill it out and join us on June 25th, next Thursday. It'll be our last webinar in this series. We'll take a break for the summer. And it's going to be on auditing in the age of COVID, presented by BDO. It's how our auditors and organizations adjusting to auditing with the challenge of COVID. This session will outline the challenges and opportunities of completing our audits with the impacts of social distancing and limited access to physical locations. We will discuss the use of digital platforms for the completion of the audit, as well as outline the more challenging audit areas and alternatives for addressing these. And as you know, a number of our organizations have in the process or may have completed, but certainly there's a number who are still working their way forward in completing their audit. Our presenters will be Blair Smith, Brian Callender, David Pluta, and Matthew Perron from BDO. I would like to take this time also to mention that AFOA Canada is launching our Certified Indigenous Human Resources Professional Program, the IHRP. The first session will be held on July 17th to the 19th in a virtual session. We also have our workshops, capacity development workshops virtually. There's a number of them available, which right from governance, human resources to values and ethics, community-based planning. We have you can go on our site and see them. One I'd like to highlight, and certainly in keeping with what we've talked about today, is we do have a one-day workshop on an introduction to whistleblowing in Canada. And the workshop learning objectives are intended to build the necessary knowledge and skills of managers, administrators, and others in an Indigenous organization or community in the key areas of whistleblowing. So certainly I'd like to draw that to your attention. It's all part of good governance and risk management, and it's important to encourage employees to disclose wrongdoing if they feel that it can hurt the organization. So, and remember, if you registered and attend 3 of our webinars in the current series, you are entered to win a prize. So thank you to everyone who attended this session today, and we look forward to your attendance next week, same day and time. Goodbye now. Have a good day.